Welcome back to WordPress Widgets Front to Back. If you've been following along, you'll notice when you activate Front to Back, we currently have a set of warnings that are appearing in the header of our plugins dashboard. Because this is not the desirable output, we'll begin focusing on how to resolve this while developing our widget. So the first thing I'd like to do is deactivate the widget. Once it's been successfully deactivated, we can return to Coda and begin to work on our plugin. So open Coda, and then let's begin to work on the constructor. Recall that the constructor is responsible for initializing the widget, initializing any dependencies, and preparing any localization that's required. To get started, we actually need to take advantage of an object-oriented principle known as inheritance. Recall from the last couple of screencasts that the class definition extends the WP_widget class. Whenever you're initializing a widget, you need to make a call into the WP widget class. Because front to back extends the WordPress widget class, that means that front to back is the child, or that the WordPress widget class is the parent. So in the constructor of front to back, we need to make a call to the parent constructor. In PHP, you do this by saying parent, 2 colons, and then construct. And then we'll pass this particular constructor several pieces of information. First, we need to specify the ID of our widget. In our case, we're going to say front to back. This will be used throughout WordPress to identify this particular widget. We'll be able to access it and provide it in class names, IDs, things like that. Next, we need to specify the name of the widget in human readable terms. To do that, we'll simply provide a string that says front to back. After that, we need to pass an array of several different options. So let's go ahead and prepare the array definition. Next, we need to give a class name. And in my case, I'm going to simply say front to back. This class name can be used in the markup of the widget so that we're able to access this widget through our style sheets. Next, we can provide a short description of the widget. Normally, in this case, I like to borrow the description from the description in the header definition that we gave in the last screencast. Let's apply it here. Finally, that's all that's required to set up the call to our parent constructor. The thing I'd like to note about this particular point is that in addition to making a call to the constructor, you want to make sure that your code is formatted well. This includes putting each argument on its own line, and in the array, you want to make sure that your keys are properly spaced as well. This follows the WordPress coding conventions, and it makes the code much more readable. So let's save our work, return to the browser, refresh the page, and attempt to activate front to back once again. Notice that the plugin's been successfully activated, and there's no warning messages. Not only that, if you point your browser to the widgets page under the appearance menu, you'll notice that front to back appears here in the available widgets, and the description that we provided is here as well. At this point, you'll also be able to take the front to back widget and drag it into one of the available sidebars. However, you'll notice there are no options. So click on delete, and then the front to back widget will be removed. We'll be populating this with options in future screencasts. For now, let's hop back into the code. Before doing anything else, I normally like to prepare localization. In order to do this, we're going to need to create a localization file, we're going to need to register a function with a hook, and we're going to need to make a call to a couple of WordPress API functions to localize our strings. So the first thing we need to do is to create a lang directory. So let's do that now. Then create a file called widget.po. PO is a file type that is managed by a program called Poedit. Poedit is a program used by translators that allow them to easily localize strings for another language. In order to prepare this file, double-click on it, and then we need to provide it with some information. I'll be providing this information in the show notes, but I figured I'd take a quick look at it right now. This is basically a boilerplate file that Poedit will use in order to just translate strings. This is basically a boilerplate for Poedit. It requires a project ID that includes creation date, revision date, who is the last person to touch the translation, who's the person or the team that is responsible for defining this file, as well as the default language, and some content type as well as encoding information. You do not have to write this by hand, but it's important to understand that this file is the foundation off of which Poedit will use to provide localized files. If you don't already have Poedit installed, you can locate it at poedit.net, and then you'll be able to download it for your platform. It's available for Windows, Mac OS X, Linux, and then you can actually get the source code if you'd like to compile it from there. Once installed, Open widget.po with poedit. When the application loads, click on the Update button. Of course, at this point, we haven't provided any localized strings, so it won't find anything. Click OK. Then, from the File menu, click on Save. We'll be working with this more in just a few moments, but hop back over to the IDE. You'll notice that there's been an update to the timestamp since we used poedit, and you'll also notice that an MO file has been created in the lang directory. This is the compiled PO file that poedit generates whenever a translator has gone in and provided translations. So, let's return to plugin.php, and let's go ahead and set up our necessary localization functions. First, let's make a call to add action, and we want to hook into WordPress's initialization, and this is done by using the init action. Next, we'll want to call a function here within our class called widget_textDomain. We'll be defining this in just a moment. Now, there's an important distinction I want to make about this particular line of code. Because we're working in the context of object-oriented programming, everything's done within the context of a class. So if you're coming from another language, you may be used to writing code that reads something such as this.functionName. In this example, it would be this.widget_textDomain. Because of the way that the WordPress API works, the way that we invoke methods on an instance of a class is that we first define an array, then we give an instance. In this case, it will be this because it's this class, and then we give it the name of the function, which is widget_textDomain. So let's go ahead and define that function right now. To do that, we'll say function widget_textDomain. Now, in this function, we'll make a call to the WordPress API and tell it what our text domain is. To do that, I make a call to the load plugin text domain function, and I'll pass it 3 parameters. The first parameter is the key that I will be using to identify all translatable strings. We'll see this in action in just a moment. In this case, I'm going to simply use front-to-back. The second parameter is deprecated, so you can simply pass false. And then the third parameter is a location of the language directory where the PO files and the MO files are kept. In our case, it will be in the lang directory. Making a call to plugin_dir_path in the current file will give PHP and WordPress its relative bearing so that it knows where to find the PO files. I'll be including a link to the load plugin text domain function in the show notes. Now it's time to localize the strings that we have here in the plugin this far. To do that, let's identify the first string. In our case, this is the human readable front-to-back string. To do this, make a function call to __ and pass it front to back, and then pass it the key value that we defined in the load plugin text domain function. This is telling WordPress that this string front to back is localized and is done so using the key front to back. Next, let's also localize our description. We don't worry about localizing things such as IDs or class names because those aren't necessarily going to be viewed by people that are reading a widget's dashboard. But the title and the description of the widget will definitely be read by someone else. So we want to localize those strings. At this point, let's save our work. Let's hop back into the browser and refresh the page that we're on. And let's make sure that everything still looks okay. So far, we have no warnings or errors, and the widget still appears. Next, hop back into your IDE. At this point, open up widget once again with poedit. Click on Update, and you'll notice that it's recognized the 2 strings that we've just localized. Click on OK, and you'll notice the source text and the translation. Now in this course, we're not actually going to be providing the translation. That would be someone else's job. But this right here is exactly how localization is done within WordPress. Once again, click File, Save, and then we can hop back into the IDE. The next thing we want to do is register our styles and our JavaScript files. Now, it's a good practice to first enqueue the style sheets before enqueuing JavaScript. And to do that, we need to actually have our CSS files. Right now, we only have our less files. So the first thing we want to do is open up the admin.less file and click Save. This will trigger CodeKit and it will create an admin.css file. So let's do the same thing for widget.less as well. Open the file, click on Save, and then it will generate a widget.css file as well. Return to plugin.php and let's make a call to the following 2 functions. First, we'll make a call to add action and we'll use the admin print styles hook provided by WordPress. We'll make sure that we pass it the register admin styles function that we will define momentarily in this class. Next, we'll add a call to add action for WP enqueue scripts, and this will be to register widget styles on this class. Now, an important note to make is that WP enqueue scripts is an action that is used to enqueue both styles and scripts. It's a little confusing, but this is the way that it works. The next thing that we need to do is actually define the functions that we've specified here in the constructor. So let's stub out register admin styles and register widget styles. Now, the first thing we want to do is register our admin styles. In order to do that, we can make a call to WP in QStyle, and we need to give this particular function a key, so we'll call this front to back admin. Next, we pass the location of the admin CSS file. We can do this by using the plugins URL helper function, which is provided by WordPress. And then we pass that particular function the location of our plugin, which is front to back. And then we pass it the CSS directory. And finally, we pass it the admin.css file. Similarly, we make a call to WP in QStyle, or we give this the key front to back widget. We'll pass plugins URL, front to back, CSS, widget.css. At this point, let's save our work. Refresh the browser, and permitting everything's gone okay, then you shouldn't see any change. But here's what you can do. View the source of this page, and if you're using Chrome, you can call view source and then give it the URL. And let's look for admin.css. Permitting everything's checked out all right, you'll notice that here's front to back admin CSS, and here's the location of the admin CSS file. Next, hop back to the dashboard and click on Visit Site, and then open it in a new tab as well. Copy the location, and then let's view the source of this page as well. Look for widget.css. Permitting everything's gone well, you'll also notice that widget.css is being included as well. Next up, we want to include our JavaScript files as well. This follows a very similar process. So let's hop back into our IDE, open admin.js, and save the file in order to trigger CodeKit's minification and concatenation process. So let's do that now. Click Save. And you'll actually see a warning, and the error is that the input is an empty string. That's simply because we haven't provided any JavaScript yet. However, this won't halt it from generating an admin.min.js file. Return to your IDE, and you'll notice that the file is here. Let's do the same thing for widget.js, and you'll see the same error, but widget.min.js has been created. So let's return to plugin.php, and let's add 2 more actions. Notice here that the first action that we're calling is to admin in Q scripts. It works the same way that admin print styles works. However, this time we're going to be calling a function register admin scripts. Next, we make a call to WP in Q scripts. This works just like the previous one. However, in this case, we're going to be making a call to register widget scripts. So let's define those functions now. All right, because this is so similar, I'm not going to type out the code word character by character. But notice that I've defined the register admin scripts function. I've made a call to WP enqueue script, not WP enqueue style, because we're enqueuing JavaScript. I've given it the same key, front to back admin, and that's okay because it's a JavaScript file, not a CSS file. And then I've given it the value of front to back JS admin.min.js. Next, let's do the same thing for the public facing widget script. All right. Notice that I've defined a function called register widget scripts. I've made a call to WP enqueue script. I've given the key front to back widget, and I've specified front to back /js/widget.min.js. Once again, let's save our work. Let's return to the browser, specifically to the dashboard, refresh, and let's copy the URL and then view the source of the page once again. Do a find for admin.min.js, and permitting you've successfully set up your hooks, you should see it here. Similarly, load up the home page in the view source. And if you have strong caching on, you may want to refresh this page. And then look for widget.min.js. And permitting that you've set up your hooks properly, you should also see this file. That's awesome. This means that we've successfully localized our files, we're loading style sheets, and we're loading the JavaScript files. Additionally, we've set up localization, and we've localized several of the strings as well as compiled them using Poedit. We've done a lot of work in this particular screencast. I'll be including notes for some of the functions and the programs that we talked about during this particular lesson so that you'll have them available for reference. In the next screencast, we're going to look at beginning to implement the form, the update method, as well as the widget method. This means that we'll begin working on the admin dashboard as well as the public-facing side of the widget. I look forward to continuing to build our widget, and I'll see you in the next lesson.